Don't know.
Yeah, well,
I don't know.
but how you doing today, man? Happy Halloween. So,
Oh,
you doing anything with the family today, or?
yeah, we're gonna go out trick or treating later and watch the fights probably.
Oh, okay, that's awesome. That's awesome, especially Anderson Silva's last UFC fight. So, who do you have in that one? Do you think Anderson's gonna pull it off, or you think Uriah
I
is gonna
hope
ruin the
Anderson
party
does.
for everyone?
Yeah, I hope Anderson does because I love Anderson. He's always been about my favorite fighter. But I don't know. Hall's younger. Anderson's, it's the end of his career, so he says. And Hall is still young in the sport. So I'm leaning towards Hall winning, but I'm always wrong on my main event picks. So that's probably good news for Spider.
I mean, what was your? I mean, I know you fought on the last card. So, I mean, before we get to that, to your fight, did you predict Habib winning that fight, or did you
No,
have?
I picked Gaethje, and I was pretty convinced Gaethje was going to win.
Mhm.
And yeah, I was wrong. Man, I wasn't even close to right. Khabib just came in and put a hurting on him.
Oh yeah, 100%. So especially like the way he did it was so dominant. So like, there's a reason why people are calling him the GOAT after that performance. To the dismay of John Jones, I know John Jones disagrees with that, but
Yeah, but John Jones is a cheater, so his opinion shouldn't matter to anyone.
yeah. But yeah, man, your last fight was on Fight Island, and you're one of the only people in the world to say that they fought on Fight Island. So like, to everyone watching, I'm guessing they have the same question as I do: is how's it like fighting on Fight Island? So like, from the moment like you get word that you're gonna be fighting, into the moment you land, and so forth, how's that experience? And do you enjoy it? Do you?
Yeah, well, first I loved the experience. It was just wonderful. The UFC, they flew us first class or way up at the front of the plane, which is nice, which I've never done before, and it was pretty cool. They just took care of us from all of it. We had to get, I don't know, half a dozen nose swabs, COVID tests, which kind of sucked, but everything else was great. It was when I first heard of Fight Island, I thought it was gonna be like just a bunch of sand and some barracks. I thought it was going to be real, just enough to put on a fight kind of thing. But it was an established island. There were condos and there were racetracks and there were $1 million yachts and there were hotel after hotel after hotel. So it was a very, very industrialized area. And it was beautiful. I got to play on the beach. I got to be out in the sun, and it was quite the experience.
I can imagine, especially after seeing like all those like embedded videos and all those videos that the UFC's putting out about Fight Island, the little cage on the beach. Did you go in the cage on the beach? Because I saw you were taking a couple of pictures of like where it says like the Abu Dhabi Fight Island like sign. But did you go in the cage and like do some like mitt work with your team, or like you
Yeah,
said, it
yeah.
was just you on the beach?
No, we hit mitts in the cage too, and the cage is not set up for rolling. It was a nice cage. Like the actual cage panels were perfect, but then it wasn't a mat; it was just plywood with UFC written on it. So it was just standing on wood. So I had to have my shoes on while I was in there, and I couldn't have rolled or done any sparring in there. But we did get in there, and we hit mitts, and it was a lot of fun.
That's awesome, man. And then to the fight, man, a fight that many thought that you won, especially Daniel Cormier on the broadcast. He was saying that he thought that you got the first two rounds. Um, Obviously, did you think likewise? Like, did you think like by the end of it when they're reading the scorecards at the end that you're like, I got this in the bag, or
Yeah,
like,
no, and I've watched the fight 5 or 6 more times, and I've won that fight. There's no argument from anyone except one judge as to who the winner of that fight was. And so it was very disappointing because I worked my ass off, and it was a good fight. So thank God it was a good fight. He was a very game opponent, and the judge that scored a 10-8 just he was ridiculous. And one judge gave him the first round too. So that all three judges, their scoring was different. The judges were just terrible. I don't know. I don't know what they ate that morning or what redheaded kids did to their family. But they say they just didn't want to like me that night because I won that fight. I outstruck him all 3 rounds. Round 3, he won. He hit me with a couple big elbows that I didn't see coming. Actually, I watched it 2 or 3 times and I still didn't see the elbow coming.
yeah, I mean, likewise on this end when that I was just like, did he get hit with an elbow or did he get hit with a right hand? It was just so
he,
fast, but
Yeah, I thought it was a cross for 3 days. I thought he caught me with his right hand, but no, it was an elbow. It was just what a slick elbow. Power to him for landing that. Um, and yeah, he was a very game opponent who lost that fight, and I feel wronged by those judges to have had it been a draw.
Yeah, man, and I can imagine, especially like you said, it's such a tough fight, and especially in those first 2 rounds when you're just out striking him every time he was coming in, you'll hit him back with like two, three, four punches combination. So for you to lose that fight, and like as a fan too, it's kind of like it was a bummer. It was a bummer because like you said, you should have won that fight. It should have been scored in your favor, but I mean,
Yeah,
what can you do?
the only positive I can find of it is I've got about 70 fights and I've never had a draw before. So now I've had a draw. So now you can just cross that off the list. I never need to get another one. I can just say, yeah, I got a draw.
There you go. As of right now, I mean, are you still recovering from? I mean, obviously, you had a couple cuts in that fight, so are you still recovering? Like, when do you plan to go back in there? Especially, I know with the holidays coming up, like, are you kind of like on the same boat with like Robert Whitaker that you just want to spend time with the family and then worry about fights next year, or you just kind of want to get back in there and
No, as soon as we're off this call, my wife is going to take my stitches out, and I'll be back in the gym, Monday. I never take downtime. I get so bored when I take any downtime. Plus, I think I'm going to go back down to middleweight, so I gotta lose some weight, and it's between fights, so I can lift now as well. So it's going to be a real good time for me in the practice room.
That's awesome. And actually, this is actually a question I've always had as a fan, especially like when you have fighters move up, weight classes. So you previously fought at middleweight, you're going back to middleweight. So if you're explaining to someone that's never been in the cage before, like what's the difference between fighting at middleweight and fighting at light heavyweight, what would that be? Because like some people would say at light heavyweight, obviously they're just obviously so much stronger than the middleweights. Middleweights are so much faster. Would you agree with that assessment, or would you say that there's a little bit more that goes into that?
I wouldn't say the strength. I've not noticed a big difference in strength. I've been able to compete and beat most 205ers as I did with middleweight. But they are bigger. I was used to at middleweight. I was one of the biggest middleweights. I was bigger than most of them. And now at light heavyweight, I'm 2 inches shorter than all of them. And I think that I've lost, let's see, this last fight, which was a draw. And then the fight before that, Ryan Spann, I thought I won the Spann fight too, but not nearly as dominantly as I did this one. I think me being the smaller, you know what, the fight before that against the Brazilian guy, I thought I won that one too. I've got a bad style for decisions, but I think me being just the smaller fighter makes stupid referees or stupid judges think I'm losing fights just because I'm smaller. I think they're crediting people with the size advantage, and if I'm not going to knock them out, and I'm trying to, but if I don't knock them out, the decisions keep going against me, and I don't want anything to be against me. So I think I'm going to go back down to middleweight and be one of the bigger middleweights again.
Yeah, and then as opposed to the judging, I know that's been a really controversial topic, obviously, like the last couple of years. So I actually just had Andre Well on for my last interview. We're actually talking about judging, and then I asked him this question, and I'm gonna ask you the same question as well. Do you think former fighters should be getting into judging just so we can start avoiding these kind of controversial calls later on in the future? It's like some fights that like we know, like even the fans knew that certain fighter won. Like if a former fighter was there judging, you think that would be any different? You think he would judge the fight fairly, or do you think it's kind of one of those things that it's such a new sport that like we kind of have to go with how it goes? It kind of like we're gonna have bad judges here and there, and we kind of just have to deal with that, or
I don't think the answer to bad judging is going to be getting fighters to judge it. Fighters could be great judges, but fighters could be terrible judges too.
mm-hmm.
I think they would probably be better than what we have now, but I've got a brick outside that's probably better than most of the judges are right now. That I think judges need to be fired. I've never heard of a judge being fired. I know who was it? The boxing was it Lomachenko that fought last week, or I think that was it.
It was against Teofimo Lopez.
Yeah, and one of the judges score was terrible. Her scorecard was just wrong. She was wrong against in every round. And the promoter said, I will never have her, judge a fight again. She will not do it.
Mm-hmm.
I will not promote a fight. And I never hear of anything like that happening in MMA. Most of the time, you don't know who the judges are. You can look it up later, but you have to look it up. It's not really announced. And that they're never fired for bad. They're never punished for bad judging. And I think if you could start punishing judges that are just obviously bad at their job, I think that would be a big incentive to make judges get better at their job. That fear of firing, the fear of not having the easy job where you sit and watch fights for 6 hours. If that can get taken away from you, I think they would start taking their job more seriously.
Yeah.
That, and I was talking to one of the referees the next day who had talked to the 10-8 judge. And the 10-8 judge told him, and I wish I could remember the judge's name, but I don't, told him the reason he scored at 10-8 was because he did more damage to me in the third round than I did to him in the first 2 rounds, which is bullshit, because the rules are every round is supposed to be scored by itself independently. What happens in round 2 should have nothing to do with what happened in round 1. And then on top of that, the round 3 was a very close round that I lost, but it was a close round. That just tells me that they're not being trained. They are being trained poorly. It's just not the way it's supposed to be. It's not the rule set that I agreed to fight under.
Yeah, man. And hopefully it changes. I mean, hopefully we stop it. Like you said, I mean, hopefully judges do end up being punished for some horrible calls in these like future fights, but we'll see how that goes. So in terms of because this is actually my last question here, because sorry I don't have much for you today, but
no,
actually,
you're golden, my man.
Yeah, but this is actually like a question for like every aspiring young fighter that's trying to make the big leagues, make it to the UFC, Bellator, all these big promotions. If you had to give them a form of advice, like one small advice, like what would that be? Like
wrestle. Wrestle at anywhere you can. The rest of MMA for the rest of time is going to be based on how well you can wrestle, or stop wrestlers from wrestling. I think every champion except the 125ers is a wrestler right now. The best champions that have ever been have been wrestlers. That wrestling has dominated the sport. Now the Dagestanis are coming in with some new form of wrestling, and they're just slaughtering people. He took down D1 D1 All-American Justin Gaethje twice like it was nothing. So wrestle. Jiu-jitsu is useful, but wrestling is necessary.
It's kind of like with I don't know if it was Joe Rogan or one of the big commentators says like being like having that wrestling base really dictates with like where like the fight goes. So like
jiu-jitsu is great, but if you don't have wrestling, you can't get it to the ground. Your jiu-jitsu won't work anymore. It's wrestling is the option. You have to be able to take someone down or stop them from taking you down. And wrestling is the only way that'll happen.
Like the one fight that like the one clear example, especially when you like brought up the jiu-jitsu example of like yeah, you can be good at jiu-jitsu, but if you can't take someone down, like what's gonna do for you? This is the Damian Maya and Tyron Woodley.
Woodley,
yeah. And like don't get me wrong,
20
like
shots, 20 shots Woodley stuffed, and that was incredible.
Yeah, especially against one of the best jiu-jitsu players of all time. So like you said, it's like if you don't have that wrestling base, then you really can't, it's gonna be tough for you. But yeah, man. But Sam, obviously, like thank you for giving me the time. It really means a lot, especially for someone that's trying to make it in this field and make it a career. So it really means a lot for you to take some time out of your day, especially on Halloween, on like a holiday that you just want to spend with your family. I really appreciate it, brother. So thank you.
You're very welcome, sir. Thank you for having me on.
Yes, sir. Man, have a good one. Enjoy the fights tonight.
Hey, thank you.
All right, bye-bye.